All right, folks, 11 minutes till Earth Day 2021 mapping event. Glad you're here. We'll get started in a bit. If you want to fill out this survey that I've got here in this box, go to twitter.com/Joseph Kursky. Fill out the survey there. No need to have a Twitter account or a Survey123 account. We're going to do some surveying of who you are and map the results, of course. Hi, folks. Joseph Kursky here with you. 2 minutes to go, and we will be live for Earth Day 2021. All things mapping and geo to understand our Earth. Thanks for being with me, and we will get started in about 2 minutes. Well, folks, we've got about 30 seconds to go. Feel free to go to my Twitter feed. And about 35 minutes ago, I posted a link to a survey, and it's in Survey123, which is a tool from Esri, a wonderful tool that allows you to actually map results of a survey in the field or, like we're doing here, in a digital mode. And I've got 3 simple questions in there that I'd love you to fill out. And of course, we're going to map the results. That's the whole goal, is to map the results and then analyze patterns that we might see. So that'll be a lot of fun if you'd like to do that. No obligation, but we're going to be starting here right now. Okay. Folks, welcome to Earth Day 2021. Joseph Kursky here, geographer, educator, and happy to be with you. I salute all the educators and others that are out there making a positive difference on our planet. We've got some familiar faces that I recognize, some names. We've got some folks that are new to the community. So wherever you happen to be in that spectrum, welcome. It's a great day to be teaching and learning about the Earth. Speaking of place, this is my homeland here behind me, Western Colorado, Mount Garfield, the Book Cliffs, and that blue line in the distance, those far hills are Utah. Okay, so you're in Colorado looking out over into Utah. Okay, what we've got here today is a fast-paced 60-minute journey. And I don't mean the 80s band journey. I mean a journey in geospatial technologies. What we're going to do is we're going to explore how and why we teach and learn about the world with interactive web-based mapping tools powered by geographic information systems. And so if we go to our page for today, I've got a story map that I'm going to actually put into that box that we saw a moment ago. And that way, you will be able to follow along with this day's events, okay, this hour's events. We only have 60 minutes together. And so we want to make it count. I want it to be useful, relevant, etc. for you all. But I'm going to be showing this story map, and I'm going to lowerize this box for the moment. If you do a search in storymaps.arcgis.com on Earth Day 2021 Facebook Live, you'll find it. So just do a search on the story map. What we're going to do is short instructional blocks. We're going to have some music, we're going to have some maps, we're going to have some apps, and more. It's going to be fun and fast-paced. But the focus, again, is how you can learn about these tools and data sets so that you can actually use them, whether you're an instructor or use them in conversation with family members and friends, showing, hey, why does the teaching about the Earth actually matter here in 2021? And I would just submit to you all that given just a few problems in our planet, climate, health, natural hazards, population change, land use, land cover, ocean acidification, energy, water. I mean, we could go on, right? These are serious issues that are complex in nature that are increasingly affecting our everyday lives. And I just submit to you that it's more relevant than ever to be teaching and learning about the Earth. So, hence, Earth Day, 1970 on to today, and hence Geographic Information Systems, which pretty much is about as old as Earth Day. So GIS started in the 1960s. Earth Day started in 1970, so roughly the same age. But looking at the Earth is a fundamental human experience, right? It's not just the last 60 years or 50 years. It goes way back in time. So we've got some ancient roots here on to modern technologies and looking at the world in different ways. How can you learn about these tools, and why should you use them and enable your students or colleagues to use them? And then really wrapped around the whole thing, why it all matters, So one thing that I want to say here, not to bore you to tears about my own background, but why should you listen to me? Why should you hang out with me for an hour on Earth Day? Well, my journey has been in 4 sectors of society. Nonprofits, so I'm active in the National Council for Geographic Education. I was president of the NCGE and remain active in it, and the American Association of Geographers and other nonprofit organizations, Society for Conservation, GIS. And then I teach. Like many of you, I love teaching. I love interacting with students and fellow faculty members. So I teach right now at the University of Minnesota, and I also teach at the University of Denver. So I've got some toes in the academic waters. I also spent a lot of my career in federal agencies, so NOAA, USGS, the U.S. Census Bureau as geographer and cartographer. And as many of you know, I'm actually at Esri, the people that make many of the geotechnologies, in fact, most of the geotechnologies that we're going to use today, Arcgis Online, Story Map, Survey 123, and other tools. I'm on the education team there, and for those of you that don't know our team, consider us as your industry partner, okay, as we journey through how do you be successful with geotechnologies in your teaching, in your instruction, in your research, and some of you are in campus facilities, figuring out where all the water lines are and the electric lines and campus safety and all that kind of stuff. So those 3 sectors of education are what my team supports, and please rely on us. We learn a lot from interacting with you as well, but that's the Esri education team. You can go there, esri.com/education. So what is Geographic Information Systems and why is it relevant to Earth Day? Well, it's software, hardware, data, methods, and most importantly, people. All y'all, as they say in Texas. You all. Ustedes. Vous. Tú. Okay? All of you. That's what makes the GIS community so relevant and engaging. And they're very caring. They all care about the Earth. They all care about helping people. Let's go ahead and take this 3-question survey. Now, again, where do you find this survey? If you go to my Twitter feed, which I'm sure you all check daily, just kidding. If you go there, about 41 minutes ago or so, I've got a link in there. It goes to Survey 123. So twitter.com/Joseph Kursky. I'll give you just a minute to do that. And I'd like you to fill out a 3-question survey. Totally optional, but here's why. I first of all like to just, if you put on your educator hat saying, oh, how could I use this same tool in my own instruction? That's what I want you to think about. Think about it in a broad sense with lots of different applications. I could use this same technique with this Survey 123. Let's go ahead and pull that up. It looks like this when you pull it up, to analyze water quality, litter, public art, infrastructure on campus, bicycle racks versus recycling bins versus ADA compliant ramps, etc. You name it, weather, soil chemistry, lots of things that you can actually study in the field and then get the results in a citizen science mode and then map and analyze. The reason why I say and analyze is because oftentimes people send me, hey, Joseph, check out the data I've got on my map now. Great, I'll say. And? Why do I say and? Because mapping is only a stepping stone to a higher and greater goal. The higher and greater goal is to understand our Earth and our communities and to take action perhaps in making our world and our communities better. That whole building of resilience and sustainability, that's really the goal in mapping and GIS. Now, it's great if you want to learn more GIS. I do too. We all do. But the point is, that is a stepping stone to a larger goal, okay? If you could fill out this survey, great. And I'm going to go back to my story map is what this is. This whole thing is a story map. And let's go ahead and look at the analysis results now. Think about this. You've all seen the JHU coronavirus dashboard, correct? You've all seen that. Billions of people have seen that. It is, unfortunately, the most used, most visited dashboard. This is also a dashboard in a sense. It's getting results from the live feed that you all have filled out in Survey 123. So here is my results of the survey that you've all filled out. We've got a nice mixture of people. Some people have not used any interactive mapping tools. Some people have used them extensively. We've got some students. We've got some K-12 educators and students. We've got community, tribal, and technical college, university people. We've got some industry. This is a great mix. It really is. It brings geo tears. I can tell you that right now. Geo tears. Here's my dashboard. Okay, so now I've got, wow, we've got some colleagues down in New Zealand. Cool. And we've got a lot of folks in North America. Do we have it? We got someone over in Asia. Cool. The point is, you've got an interactive dashboard. This dashboard took me about 25 minutes to set up. Okay, we're not talking days, weeks. In the old days of geographic information technologies, it was here, take this manual and you go ahead and put your regular career on hold for a while you learn all this GIS-y stuff. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's easy and it's a snap of the fingers, but it is vastly easier and more accessible than ever. And that's one of the goals that I wanted to express in the 5 hours that we have together today. Just kidding, we don't have 5 hours. But see this dashboard? I see now, if I expand this, you'll see it even in a richer way. I see the charts, the graphs, the maps that I've set up. Literally, it's drag and drop, just like making a story map. And I've got some tutorials, and there's lots of other tutorials on how to make a story map as well as dashboards. So here we've got this interactive dashboard, and I can zoom in on a cluster of these. We've got someone out in Hawaii. Cool. All right, so we've got some data we can interact with. Okay, so we've got a K-12 other educators, CTE, art, etc. Actually, we've got several people, perhaps, out there. Cool. Then the point is, these dashboards are quite powerful and quite easy to set up. And think about this for, okay, maybe not surveying your fellow colleagues, but maybe this is water quality in a very tight localized area, maybe a wetland down the street from your school campus or your university campus. So we've got this nice mixture. We've got 33 surveys that have been filled out. Time permitting, we'll check back with this in a bit. But that's one of the tools that I wanted to show you here today. Now, let me mention, because I know time will be at a premium here, but we've got a couple of events that I wanted to point you to, not just Earth Day, but beyond that. What do we have? We've got an Earth Imagery Summit next week. Next week, it's going to be Wednesday and Thursday, 28 and 29 April. It is free. It is. We've got about 1,300 people signed up so far. Please join us. It is going to be 2 half days, not full days. I know many of you are teaching right around now and finishing the semester, but if you can possibly squeeze in maybe even a section of that, it's going to be well worth your while, because it's going to be focused on how do I use imagery and remote sensing in instruction, and how do I teach modern remote sensing. After that, a couple months after that, we'll be in June, and we've got the Esri Education Summit. I've met many of you there over the years. This year it's going to be virtual, just like it was last year. So we won't have the, giving each other high fives, high Geo fives in the hallways, but we will have a nice event, I think, and it is going to be a lot of fun and very informative. So also free, please join us 2 days in June. And then following that, a couple weeks after that, is the big Esri user conference, where you get people not just from education, but transportation, public safety, natural resources. Tell your students about it, because it is applied spatial thinking and applied geography in a wide variety of fields. And it's great networking. It's great, networking for future jobs for your students. It's great just to be inspired by, last year E.O. Wilson was there. The man is like 85 years old, still active in biology, geography. He uses GIS. Jane Goodall was there last year. Jack Dangerman, founder of Esri. There's some really inspiring people that are keynoting and will be there every year. I don't know who exactly the keynoters are this year, but Jack will be there, as well as lots of people demoing new software pieces and also what they're doing with GIS all around the world from the actual users out there. Then GIS Day. GIS Day, so good to me. I knew that there would be some songs in here, and that was the first one. But GIS Day happens every November, and it's been happening since 1999. This will be, the 22nd or 21st GIS Day. Anyway, the point is, it is in November, and it's a way to highlight what GIS is doing around the world. So there's some resources on the GIS Day site. Another thing that I wanted to point out here is a series of new videos that I've got called GIS Helps, Geographic Information Systems Helps. One of them is GIS provides double benefits. And so the point of these videos is as follows. Each of them highlight a different aspect of GIS. GIS is high tech, and this particular one has me with my double, okay? Hence double benefits. Also in this video, it's probably the only video on the planet to incorporate the Osmonds and GIS, because I actually sing a little bit of double lovin' from the Osmonds. Okay, some of you might know that the Osmonds was actually a band. Anyway, that's another series of videos. I hope it's a good resource for you. Let's do this. Let's now get into some of my favorite web mapping applications. Now, you might say, well, why should we listen to Joseph's list? This is just an idea planter. You might have your own favorites, and time permitting, we could actually have a little dialogue. We don't have that huge of a group, and we could actually do that. Yes, Dr. Bill, the user conference is virtual, and it will be free again. So thanks for those comments coming in. Just like any list on the web, this could be, you see these things, the 5 coolest places to visit, right, Diana? In Hawaii, before you die. The 5 coolest bands of all time. They're a bit subjective, okay? These are admittedly a bit subjective, but I want to show you my 3 favorite at the moment. They vary for me. Web mapping applications to understand the whys of where. A swipe tool on the left side, compelling and data-rich change over space and time. Through human impact on the landscape, as you can see, Southwest Las Vegas is the default location for where this map actually starts, where this image set actually starts. You can see a big IKEA store here at this intersection in Las Vegas. Thank you very much, Priscilla, honey. But in the past, it was sagebrush and rattlesnakes, okay? So lots of change in a short amount of time. In this case, on the right-hand side, you can see I've got 2014. On the left-hand side, I've got the 2020 imagery. Fascinating. Also, a reminder of, the Earth is a dynamic planet. It is rapidly changing. So if I scroll out on the Wayback Imagery a bit, and I go scrolling over to the east a bit, I look at Lake Mead, which I think most of you know it's an actual reservoir. Okay, let's use the same swipe tool and look at, see right where I'm looking right now? I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. What's wrong with this picture? The water level is going down. Okay, so if we've got a semi-arid area and a major city, that could be a problem. If there's not enough groundwater, where are they going to get their water? Surface water, but if the surface water is decreasing, there's a double problem there, right? So water is a major issue, right? It's one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and it's I think a key subject. This stems way back from when I worked at the U.S. Geological Survey. We had those water resources posters that some of you might remember. They're all digital now, but the point is, it's all about why water is important to teach about. Watersheds, water quality, river systems, sustainable development, etc. So this is a great tool, not just to look at urban sprawl and water issues, as we've highlighted here, but think of this same tool to explore. Time doesn't permit me to explore more, but agricultural expansion in the Great Plains of the USA or Saudi Arabia, glacial retreat in Alaska, coastal erosion in England, urban sprawl in Sao Paulo, or you name it. The construction of the Three Gorges Dam in China. I mean, you've got a global set of high-resolution imagery at your fingertips. This is an incredible tool. Now, for those of you that want to dig deeper, when I know there's some people here on the live webcast today that some of my geo heroes, and you want to dig deeper, well, you can. In the upper left, there is a cloud with layers symbol. And if you sign in to ArcGIS Online, you can actually save these images into ArcGIS Online. Now, you may wonder, well, why would I want to do that? Well, because in this case, if you have those 2 different image dates, or if you want to change the image dates, it's easy to do, then you could put other layers on top and do some analysis across layers, which is the whole point of geographic information analysis, is I could put land cover, I could put land use, I could put mean annual precipitation on here, couldn't I? I could put natural hazards, landslides, other layers, and then look at the relationships and the patterns and the trends. That's what we want to do. We want to do this with these sets of tools. I'm going to put my map hat on. That was a gift from one of my colleagues that found it at Kmart for like $2. I mean, what's not to love? But it's basically this. What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? So why should we care about urban sprawl? Why should we care about water quality? Hey, I'm 12 years old. I'm in your class. Why should I care about this stuff? This is a way for them to use a tool that scientists use, that city planners would use, that land use planners would use. Okay, I could go on. The second one that I wanted to share with you right now is the Water Balance app. So let's say you're teaching about climate, ecoregions, etc. This is a great example of a web mapping application, but also an example of the increasing use of Internet of Things feeds. So in this case, let's say we go down to the Amazon and we click there. Ooh, I see here now that it's not summer and winter, it's the wet season and the dry season, right? And I can pan across here saying, oh, October and November looks like the dry season. March, April, May is the wet season, according to this data. We always have to say according to this data. because we want to be critical of data, not just accepting it because it's a web map or because it's online, right? You want to have your students be critical of data, or you want to have your colleagues be critical of data. Maps have this sort of air of authenticity, even though not in the not too distant past, it was the USGS and the Ordnance Survey in the UK and the United Nations Environment Program and other agencies creating data. You and your students and your colleagues, anybody can create map data and put it in this kind of environment now. So all the more reason to be critical of data, right? Know where it came from, know who created it, know what the scale is, know how often it is updated, etc. Okay, so let's say you're just teaching about wet season, dry season, climate, ecoregions, and I click in southern Libya now, and there are whole months here, as you can see, as I pan across here, where there's absolutely no precipitation at all. Correct? Interesting. And now let's look at southeast Texas, a little bit closer to home for many of us. Okay, there are certain spikes in here. August 2017, major hurricane event, right, etc. So you can actually tie it to having your students or your colleagues remember or look at information about what happened at that time to have that huge spike and what's the overall trend. Looks like in this case, according to this data set, there is a bit of an increase in precipitation in that part of the world. Probably no surprise to you folks that are living down there. Another tool I wanted to show you is the Landsat Explorer. Now, time doesn't permit me to go into this in great detail, but what you've got at your fingertips here with the Landsat Explorer is you have the ability to select two different times with a swipe map. You also, since it's Landsat, you have the ability to filter out clouds, the season of the year. You can also do the following. You can say, oh, I want to mask an area and highlight another area, and so on. And since it's Landsat, you've got color infrared. You've got different bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, not just the visible range. Now, this is Landsat data, so it's going to be medium scale. You're not going to be able to see people's cars or your own school campus, but the idea is you're looking at a larger area and not as much detail. And you're also, number two, looking at a farther back expanse in time. Remember, this world imagery way back goes back to 2014. The Landsat imagery goes back to the early 1970s, 1973, 1974-ish. So we're talking the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton. Now, those are bands, by the way. Anyway, the point is you've got a 50-year expanse of data at your fingertips with this Landsat Explorer app. And these are applications that my wonderful colleagues here at Esri created with the data that is available to us now. So as educators and as just interested citizens, right, we can say, wow, look at this. What a great resource for understanding the Earth, okay? Those are my three favorite web mapping applications. I'd like to highlight a couple of tools here. I'm not going to go into them in great detail. Time doesn't permit me to do that. But ArcGIS Online, it is a cloud-based set of data, tools. For example, you can drop a pin on the landscape and say, where does the water flow from that point? You can draw a line across a 2D or 3D web map and say, what is the elevation profile? I mean, amazing resources that you've got at your fingertips. Now, nothing against textbooks, and I've written several myself, but you're no longer confined to this map on page 300 of your textbook that's this big. You know what I'm saying? Nothing against them. I mean, they're great resources for they all have their place. But you've got this interactive living atlas set of data, for example, that's a subset of ArcGIS Online at your fingertips. So ArcGIS Online, Business Analyst Web, it's got not just census data, things like who buys lottery tickets, who exercises 5 times a week, who bicycles to work, who has 2 dogs and 1 cat, who has 2 dogs and 2 cats. I mean, the granularity is amazing. Sure, not every place around the world is going to give you that fine detail at small units of geography, but you've got an amazing tool. Again, just like ArcGIS Online, Business Analyst Web, as the name implies, it's running on the web, nothing to install, any device, anytime, anywhere. Story maps. Let's show a few story maps. Some of you use story maps in your instructions. Some of you have made story maps. The age of the Anthropocene, the age of humans, I would highly recommend you looking at that one. Hot Numbers is, as you probably would imagine, it's all about climate and climate change. And there's another one called Earth's Biggest Storms, Tropical Cyclones. We talked about issues on our planet that are relevant and why we teach about them at Earth Day and, of course, all throughout the year. But taking a look at this, for example, oh my goodness gracious, you've got an amazing set of resources in 2D and 3D. And so one of the things that I wanted to point out here is as follows. You've got the 3D scene viewer, which is part of ArcGIS Online. It is a way for you to, I'm not keen on using tools just because they exist, right? Especially you educators out there. You've got a lot of things at your fingertips. You have to carefully weigh whether they're going to be suitable in your instruction, correct? So you can't do everything. You can't use every tool. You wouldn't want to use every tool. You might have existing lessons that are just fine with the tools that you already have. But for some things that maybe are not as engaging as you would like, or they are not as interactive, this story maps, for example, can be a very compelling way of presenting content, for example, about climate or cyclones or human impact on the landscape. And so just to give you an example, there's 2D maps of the historical, cyclone paths, but having this in 3D where you can actually track the life of a cyclone and interact with it as we're doing right here, I just think this is amazing and very, once again, very compelling. So this is the tropical cyclone story map, one of my favorite story maps that are out there. Okay, let's pause there. How are you? Happy Earth Day. Joseph Kursky here with you in case you joined us late. We are exploring different ways to teach and learn about the Earth through mapping and geotechnologies. And we started off with a survey 1, 2, 3. Let's go back to that ever so briefly and look at our results. This is the dashboard that I set up. Wow, we've got some additional points on here now than we had before. So that's interesting. And I can see the results and see where people are from. This is the other thing I should have mentioned earlier. I'll mention it now. But we've got a different kind of a base map, as you may have noticed here. This is the colored pencil base map. There's lots of different base maps, and you can even customize and create your own base map if you'd like, with your own colors and so on. So let's, it's sort of a merging of cartography, art, science, and geographic information systems. So very wonderful to have this at your fingertips. So thanks for filling out that survey. Let's go back to our story map that we're going through, and I'm going to again share this story map with that Facebook page so that you'll be able to go through the story map on your own time when you have more time. You'll be going on Saturday night, you'll be saying, Joseph, I'm looking at the story map and this is incredible, and you skipped this on Thursday, and why didn't you cover this? So that's exact. I packed more in here than we'll be able to cover today for good reason, because I knew you folks were the top-notch, want to dig deeper types of folks. Here's my favorite phone mapping applications to explore the world. Survey 123, which we've already covered. Mapillary, which I really like. It allows you to create like a Google Street View with your own tools, okay, with the Mapillary app. So I've got some Mapillary tracks in different places around the world, and other people are contributing as well. But the idea is you could make a Mapillary street-like view or trail-like view of the place you went on the field trip with your students, or your local wetland, or your local urban greenway, or whatever it is that you're interested in having in that immersive experience. So I would highly recommend that. Tomorrow, actually, I'm going to publish a blog on the Esri community zone, used to be called GeoNet, on a fairly new application from Arcgis Solutions, Arcgis Augmented Reality GIS. And this really allows you to touch the future. Some of you have seen in the Geospatial Revolution video where they're looking at the phone, they're looking through their phone and they're seeing attributes. Oh, restaurant, light pole, tree species, tree type, tree height. This allows you to do that. Ooh, so look for that tomorrow. That's another one of my new favorites. Now it's time for some Geo songs. All right. I'm going to the field, baby, don't you want to go? I'm going to the field, baby, don't you want to go? I'm going to collect some data in citizen science mode. I'm going to where the Wi-Fi's far behind. I'm going to where the Wi-Fi's far behind. But that's okay, 'cause we can collect data offline. How about this one?
Rasters and vectors are the maps we two can share.
That's a oldie, but a goodie. How about this one?
I look at my maps and I see they need tending while my device gently beeps.
While my device gently beeps. Get it? Oh, that's so bad. Thanks for enduring. Okay, that's enough of that geosong business for the moment. Let's do the GIS crossword puzzle for a few moments. Here's a nice way for getting your students, especially if they're in GI science or geotechnologies, sort of an icebreaker kind of thing. Test their knowledge in a fun way. That's, as you probably can sense, one of my main goals is to get students excited about all this. This is really exciting stuff and important stuff, as you know. So if we go to the GIS crossword puzzle, I'm just going to give you 5 clues, 16 across, and I've got 400 clues. If you really want to dig deep, features that overlay or cross each other. 40 across. Type of thematic map in which areas are symbolized in proportion to a variable that represents a summary of the geographic characteristics within that area. Okay. 69 down. University of Kansas, rock chalk. Cartographer George, who devised the natural breaks classification. Interesting. Okay, last one, 295 down. The standard deviation of the residuals, prediction errors. Okay, let's take a look at, I'm going to give you the answers to a couple of those now. 40 across, choropleth. You probably knew that. 69 down, the University of Kansas cartographer George Jenks. George Jenks, rock chalk, Jayhawks. The others, okay, I don't supply it in this essay, but I do have all the answers in as attachments to this particular Esri community post, but you probably know what they are. RMSE, root mean square error for 295 down, and then also type of thematic map in which areas are symbolized in choropleth map. But if you take a look at this, this is just a small sample of the overall crossword. I've got a lot packed in there. Like many of you, I think most of you, probably all of you, if you want to do something, you want to do it, you want to go whole hog, you want to go all in. I want all in, Alex. And so I've got a pretty deep and rigorous crossword puzzle here for your teaching purposes. And also, hey, it's pretty geeky, but if you're at a gathering, even a virtual gathering, you could use these as a way to give a nice, icebreaker and start the conversation going. All right, folks. Shakespeare. Let's talk about Shakespeare. Shakespeare loved maps. Here's my argument for why Shakespeare even loved maps. William Shakespeare, King Henry IV, Part 1, Act 3. Lord Mortimer and Cousin Glendower. With you sit down, and Uncle Worcester. A plague upon it, I have forgot the map. Ooh. Yes, my friends, Shakespeare loved maps. Now let's chat about books. I love to read. I love reading as much as I love mapping and exploring the world. The best books I read in 2020, I'd love to have a chat with you as time permits here. But first of all, Follow the River. James Alexander Thom. It's all about a 1755-ish true experience where a person left Virginia and followed the rivers back to her homeland. Pretty amazing. Yep, using spatial thinking before there were a lot of geotechnologies around. Indeed. I finally read The Count of Monte Cristo. Probably some of you read that in high school. Somehow I missed it when I was growing up in this part of the world. We did not read that in high school. But I finally did actually listen to it on audio, and the author, the narrator, did all of the Italian accent, the British, the French, and the Spanish accent, and the females as well as the males. Wonderful, all those accents. But it was a really great story in terms of history and geography, as well as the human condition of forgiveness and repentance and all kinds of other themes. Philbrick's book, In the Eye of the Hurricane, I've talked to some of you in Virginia about this, but one of the compelling arguments, again, comes back to geography. Why the French sent the fleet up to Yorktown or off the coast of Virginia in 1781-ish is because they had a series of devastating hurricanes in the Caribbean. So the French were like, Monsieur, we've got to get our boats out of the Caribbean. So we're going to send them up to Virginia. Very bad French accent there. But the point is, there's some geography and history in there. Ooh, interesting. So the natural hazards played a role. Around the World in 80 Trains. This is an author in the UK that basically her and her partner went around the world in 80 trains. They even went to North Korea. Fascinating, cultural geography. And then I read Alex Trebek's autobiography. Many of you know that he was a great friend to geography and hosted the Geography Bee every year faithfully for many years. My favorite geography-related books of all time. Let's talk about those a bit. I know many of you know The Mapmaker's Wife. It's about the French surveying team that surveyed 1 degree of latitude at the equator, and they compared it to the other measurement that went up to Svalbard off the north coast of Norway. And I wanted to compare that. Is the Earth an oblate spheroid, or is it a prolate spheroid? So that's a wonderful book. And it's all about, let's make this really accurate. And they're going up and down hills, and the natives are, firing arrows at them. But we've got to get this accurate. Longitude, still one of my favorite books about Harrison's longitude clock. And all books from Eric Larson, including Isaac Storm, which is about the 1900 hurricane to hit Dallas, Dead Wake about the Lusitania. Simon Winchester is one of my favorite history and geography authors. The Map That Changed the World, Smith's Geologic Map of England and Wales. The newest one, Land. I just finished that actually after 2020 because it was published in January. So just about 2 months ago, I finished that one. And Andrea Wolf, I met her when I was at the user conference one year at the Esri user conference, and she wrote that wonderful book called The Invention of Nature about von Humboldt and his geographic and mapping voyages and excursions and scientific research. And I'm also fond of some of my own books too. I'm fond of all of them. You know how they are. They're labors of love, and you end up loving them. So Interpreting Our World is all about the revolutionary moments in geography. 100 revolutionary moments. Here's my 5 favorite data sets from the Living Atlas of the World, just to kind of plant your mind around this. Popular demographics. Now, we all have our lesson. Probably many of us have our lesson about going to census.gov, downloading the demographic data, downloading the block group boundaries, the zip codes, the census tracts, and then joining that. And that's a long, arduous process, and it's painful for me to actually say this because I used to work at the Census Bureau, and it's still a painful process for you to go to that site and do that. Some of you might say, well, that built character and that made us who we are. Well, okay, but you don't need to do that anymore. And part of the reason why is because the popular demographics, which is from the ACS, the American Community Survey, is actually sitting inside ArcGIS Online, in part of the Living Atlas. And very soon, the 2020 decennial census data will be in there as well. So there's other ways to teach about joining. I would argue that that's still a fundamental kind of a task, especially if you're teaching GI science, remote sensing, GIS. But some of those tried and true lessons, we don't need to do it that way anymore. Just because we always have doesn't mean we should going forward. I just wanted to give you a gentle nudge that way. Here's an example from the real-time weather feed, for example, from ArcGIS Online. You've got real-time weather. So we're looking at right now, we've got a little precipitation in South Dakota, a little bit in Oklahoma right now. For those of you that are in those areas, you probably know what I'm saying. You're probably living in Maine, New York. This is global, though. Wow, fascinating. So we've got a global feed of weather stations. There's a participant today from Asia. And so we've got global temperatures. Not at the same density, true, but many of these data sets are global, which is very exciting for us in the world of geo and enviro. Tornado tracks, the date, the time, the injuries, the fatalities. It's a grim but a very interesting data set, not just to teach about the tracks of the tornadoes, but there are some generalizations that I think are instructive when you use that data set. First of all, they're thin lines. And as we know, especially for those of you in Oklahoma, one of the reasons why tornadoes are scary and dangerous is because they're oftentimes wide. And so there is a attribute on those tornado tracks that give you the width of the tornado. Estimated width, again, be critical of the data, estimated width, but also they go in a straight line. So we have the touchdown and the liftoff point for those tornado tracks. And another reason why tornadoes are dangerous, right, is because they're a bit unpredictable. They're sinuous. They wobble. They move in different directions. Sometimes predictably, but oftentimes not. So it's a nice way for you to get to students to consider the patterns of relationships and trends, but also what does the map not show? What does the map not show? So that's the tornado tracks. The wildfire perimeters, that's increasingly relevant to our everyday lives, right? So looking at the wildfire perimeters and global hydrography with the watershed boundaries and the nested rivers inside those watersheds. That's oftentimes a hard thing for students to grasp. But if you use the 3D scene, you get, basically like I like showing behind me, where you got the ridge lines and then you've got the drainage coming away from the ridges, and then you've got the watershed boundaries. I mean, it's just, they get it. Okay. And again, what's where, why is it there, and why should we care? What's your favorite map, folks? My favorite map is still this 1992 map from Thielen and Pike from the USGS. That is the first digital elevation mosaic, in this case, of just the 48 states of the US, but it's still kind of a breakthrough for its time. It's not a satellite image. It's a DEM that's all stitched together. And even at this scale, and time doesn't permit me to go into the larger scales, but you can see the Black Hills, you can see the Coteau de Praire, which I'm pointing at right here in northeast part of South Dakota, and how the glacial lobes divided. You can see the driftless area in Wisconsin. I know we've got some folks on here from Wisconsin. Welcome. And the Sutter Buttes in California, in the Central Valley. It's just the amount of detail even though it's a national, 48 states map, is absolutely stunning. It's absolutely stunning. So I love this particular map, the Thielen and Pike 1992. Okay, let's do this. 5 everyday and fun examples showing why it is important to pay attention to mapped data quality. Now, this sounds super boring, I realize. Oh, the data blog. I can't contain my excitement. Let me check my email. Maybe I need to go to the dentist. Okay, the point is, I've got this blog that a colleague and I started over 8 years ago now, called the Spatial Reserves Data Blog. And one of the posts in there, just do a search on spatial reserves, everyday examples of, this comes back to what I was talking about earlier. We want students, we want others to be critical consumers of data. And so I've got short essays in here that you could actually use as for teaching purposes. And so this everyday examples of being critical of data is one of those. So in here I have, as the name implies, some fun but instructive, and I hope it's useful to you all, examples of being critical of data. So for example here, George Mason University, simple Chinese fast food chain. Interesting. I thought George Mason was a major research university. Why does it say simple Chinese fast food chain? Is that because there's a food court in the student union? What about this one? A couple of colleagues and I did write, in fairness to the publisher, you really need to flip this. Yeah, orientation matters in a catalog like this or in a map. So they did, to be fair. But for a while it was like this. Oops. What about this one? I know it gets hot in Texas, but this is really hot, really windy, really humid, and it's like Noah's flood. Look at the precipitation rate. The only thing that's normal is the pressure. But the point is, you've got Internet of Things feeds, right? From a variety of stream gauging stations, wildfire perimeters, weather stations. Sometimes those are in error, and you need to have a critical eye on the data. So if you were mapping this and didn't pay any attention, you'd have a huge spike in Cleburne, Texas, just south of Dallas. Going all the way to Dallas. It's a mighty lonesome ride. Anyway, the point is, be critical of data, right? Here's the last one that's, it's not mapping related, but again, points to the whole notion of what we're talking about. I thought I was a pretty big Fab Four fan, but some of these songs, to be honest, I've never heard of. Cans Buy Me Love, A Day in the Sky, Penny Lance is in my, what is that? It's not even an album. It's someone's misspelled playlist. So again, be critical of data and understand the benefits, but also the limitations of the data that you're using. So you're encouraging data fluency is the point, right, folks? Okay, time for a Geo Quiz. How's everybody doing? Is everybody okay? Let me check the comments here. Okay, no one's saying this is the most horrible thing I've ever experienced, Joseph. I'm hoping that this is it's also modeling some ways that you can excite students about learning about the world. Now, in this case, I'm also going to highlight a capability inside ArcGIS Online, and it is called the presentation mode in ArcGIS Online. So in this case, let's go full screen here. Why not? Living large, right, folks? Let's name this place a multiple choice quiz about the Earth. Okay, what do you think about this, folks? Victoria Falls, Angel Falls, or Niagara Falls? Take a look at the vegetation, right? You're thinking about the orientation is north here, so this is kind of sinuous. What if I change the scale? What if I went way out? Let me look at the comments. Does anybody have any guesses? If I went way out, now you know what it is. That kind of was a giveaway, right? Scale matters. So it is Victoria Falls. Okay, great. And I'm using the presentation mode in ArcGIS Online. You could actually use this to give quizzes to assess student work in a fun but informative way. Okay, Aconcagua, Arenal, or Kilimanjaro. Let's go way in. Let's go into a large scale here and take a look at this particular. Looks like a volcano. Okay, good, good. There's a lot of vegetation scarring. Yep, will do in here. And this particular quiz is, I'm going to give the URL, thanks Paul, in here. This is the URL for the quiz. But since there's some scarring here and some, looks like active landslides, it looks like there's even some volcanic activity with some steam maybe coming off of that, possibly. If I zoom way out, you're going to know what it is. Okay, so it's Arenal, Costa Rica. Yep, pura vida. Let me put the URL for the story map in here as well so that you can explore these in more detail. So the point is, well, let's do one more. Let's do one more. Urban rivers. Let's keep it at this size for the moment. Urban rivers. Is that London, Paris, or Hamburg? London, Paris, or Hamburg? You're looking at the patterns of streets, right? You're looking at the pattern of the river. You're looking at the open spaces and what you know about parks in all of those cities. You folks are good. Keep those comments rolling in, folks. Look at these radial patterns. Fascinating. This is using imagery, obviously, in ArcGIS Online. This is probably an easy clue right here. But you're using ArcGIS Online to teach about urban patterns, about land use, about natural hazards, about coastal processes, etc. So it is Paris. And I've got more, as you can see. We're on slide 8 of 50. Don't have time to do it all, but there's lots of exciting things. I think they're interesting, and feel free to take that idea and just run with it and do more, okay? All right, so the nice thing about these story maps, like I've got here, I can embed other maps, video, audio, static documents right inside my story map, which is one of the reasons why I like teaching with story maps. I don't exclusively use story maps. I still use Microsoft Sway, I use PowerPoint, I use video, I use Prezi, etc. But oftentimes I'm using story maps. Now let's just think about this, stepping back for a moment. Here are what I submit to you all as 5 forces that are bringing us to a really pivotal time in GIS. Geo-awareness. People are aware of the issues that we talked about at the beginning of the hour. Climate, land use, natural hazards, population change, human health. So the level of awareness is at an all-time high, at least what I've experienced in my career. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are, by and large, saying, we need to be teaching environmental science and geography and geographic information science and data science and so on at all levels of education, even in K-12. They're not quite saying that, but at least they're more aware of the fact that these things actually matter and we need to be teaching them somewhere. Geo-enablement, people using geotechnologies. I used to bring up the example, hey, have you ever used a phone app to find your way across campus, the nearest public library, your grandmother's house, etc.? Now I usually say to people, hey, have you used the Geo app from the Johns Hopkins University, the COVID map? And everybody with a device of some sort has used or viewed that over the last 13 months. Sadly, that is the most popular mapping app ever, for good reason, right? People need the information. They need it now. The geotechnologies having evolved into the cloud. I mean, it's great that you've got your music in the cloud, right? You've got Pandora and Spotify and Apple Music, Amazon Music, etc. So you've got your ABBA's greatest hits in the cloud. That was a band, by the way. Anyway, the point is, it's great to have that, right? You can access it anytime, anywhere. It's great that you have documents in the cloud. Your spreadsheets, your article that you're working on with a colleague, etc. You've got it in Google Drive and OneDrive and Dropbox, etc. But I just submit to you all that it's even better to have geotechnologies in the cloud, because geotechnologies in the cloud is a huge leap forward. Now, with all these vexing problems, which don't stop at disciplinary boundaries, right? They're not just geography or economics or history or data science. They're all those things. And they don't just stop at political boundaries, right? They're not just your city, your country, your state. They transcend all those things. And they also don't stop at physical boundaries like this ridge behind me. They don't stop at any of those things. That's why having geotechnologies in the cloud is so revolutionary, because now we can have a diversity of people with a large variety of backgrounds all weighing in on solving these problems, right? Not just studying them and analyzing them, but actually getting a handle on this stuff and solving it. And citizen science, that was an example earlier on in the workshop today, right? You filled out a form. It was in Survey 123. I created a dashboard so we can easily view the results of that simple survey. Remember this? Yeah. So that is an example of citizen science. That's an example of the growing number of things that people are collecting with citizen science, right? Water quality, the Mapillary app that I talked about earlier, tree species, erosion, pine beetle infestations, etc. Okay? So those are, along with storytelling, and I'm telling a story with a map here. And then I just want to ever so briefly lay out some trends that I believe are important. I know many of you are GIS instructors, and you're probably saying, well, Joseph, I also teach this and this. And so, yeah, we could have a discussion. I'd love to do that in the future with you all about, what are some other significant trends. But definitely, so we've had 3D visualization for years, but now we can actually, like with ArcGIS Urban, we can actually analyze things in 3D. And again, remember, like I was saying before, don't just do it because the technology is there. Incorporate some of these, in this case, 3D analytics, if it adds value to your instruction. BIM, Building Information Management, computer-aided drafting, the architecture, engineering, and construction, not merging, but at least touching GIS so that we can have interior spaces mapped, where we spend most of our time, and exterior spaces mapped, where we'd probably want to spend more of our time, right, folks? So having that is important. Let's say there's a weather event on a campus, a university campus at 3 p.m. on a Friday. If we had the integrated interior versus exterior spaces all mapped, then we'd know where the emergency exits are, where the students are at 3 p.m. on a Friday, in typical times when they're all on campus or most on campus, etc. We can have a resilience model built for the campus with these tools that we're starting to see. And this all came in part from Jack Dangerman and the Autodesk CEO getting together a couple years ago and saying, we really need to be working together. It doesn't make any sense for us not to. Real-time data, I talked about weather and stream gauging stations and traffic cams and all that other stuff that's coming from the Internet of Things, increasingly tied to location. Enterprise GIS, what I mean by that is GIS is no longer just this sort of niche thing in organizations, like one or two people, hey, you need some spatial data, go down the hall and to the right, and there's the GIS staff. Go talk to them. They're really nerdy, but they're nice people. Go talk to them. No, it's being embedded more and more in people's tool belts throughout an organization, for example, a city government. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is really already transforming most GIS and other kinds of jobs. No longer will future students of yours, for example, have to collect all the fire hydrants or all the light poles, or they're going to have a video in that town, and it's going to automatically collect from that video every single object that looks like this. That's a light pole, and that's 30 meters or 30 feet or whatever the units are high, and it's got this kind of bulb, and it was last maintained on this date. It's going to be automatically collected through these AI and machine learning tools, and then their job is going to be curating all that data and deciding, what to keep and what not to keep, and managing all that data. So it's really transforming our world, not just in entry-level jobs. 5 skills important in your journey. Again, this is my own list, but based on all these decades of working with good people like you out there, asking good questions. That's where, the people that we hire at Esri and probably in your organization, you want people to ask good questions. Even I encourage students, I know there's some students on, ask questions that your teacher's not even asking you. Ask questions your employer's not even asking you if you're in the workforce already. So that's the kind of people that we want and other organizations want, is people that actually ask good questions. Also, geofoundations are important. What are projections? How do I map data? How do I symbolize it? How do I classify it? And why all that matters? Because now you've got a global audience potentially for any research project that you're using. You could create a story map and it could be viewed by many, many people, correct? Working with data is really critical. I talked about the Spatial Reserves data blog. I also have some videos on my Our Earth YouTube channel, which you are cordially welcome to check out. I'll put that link in the chat box here. I have 5,000 videos on that channel, okay? I'm very passionate about this, like I know all of you are. No need to look at all 5,000, but there's some on career skills and pathways that might be relevant. Be flexible, go outside your disciplinary comfort zone, being willing to go outside your regional comfort zone, go international. I mean, when I think about, my own career that goes way back to the late Cretaceous, the most valued experiences that I had, really the ones that stand out are, when I taught in Taiwan and New Zealand and the UAE and Kenya and Germany and so on. So, those are really wonderful experiences, and I just encourage you folks to, to take those. Go outside the comfort zone, or if you're at a conference, go to a track that is completely outside of your sort of wheelhouse. And I do the same thing. I'm not telling you to do anything that I'm not, practicing what I'm preaching as well. So a couple years ago at AAG, for example, I went to the social work track. I didn't know anything about their methods. I met some interesting people. I found out what they're passionate about. And I finally have good communication skills. Develop those. Have your 5, your 10-minute, your 15-minute elevator speech, or when your CEO or your university president or provost comes down the hall and say, we need to have you go and tell why what you're doing is important. You need to have that ready to go, because it's still not universally recognize that the things that you and I bring to the table are actually valued universally. So be prepared to give those elevator speeches and be inspired by this Geo Inspiration column, not because I wrote it and did the interviews, but because of the people that are in there. I mean, we've got a diversity of people from all walks of life and ages and backgrounds and so on, doing amazing things with geotechnologies. There's city planners, there are wildlife biologists, there's meteorologists, there's the state climatologist there in the upper left of Vermont. I mean, there's all kinds of inspiring people, and that's the whole goal of this Geo Inspirations column, is to inspire you and your students. Let me show you this. This I actually took in a real high school. It's obviously a doorstop now, but it not too distant past, it was someone's valued part of their IT infrastructure. And so the point I'm making here is, don't get too attached to the tools and the data sets. We've looked at some wonderful things today, but the tools change, they evolve, they get easier to use, they get more powerful as time goes on. This tool right here, this is the most important tool, right? Your brain. Keep nurturing that. Be a lifelong learner. Time for some songs.
Mr. Cardo, why don't you come to your senses? Creating geofences for so long now. How about this one? I had a friend named Susie. She got herself a GISP. We think she is the smartest one in town. I found out at the UC that Susie got her GIS degree. Don't you know where she can now be found? She's in the CART lab now. She's in the CART lab now. Oh yeah, she spends all her time making polygons, points and lines. She's in the CART lab now.
She's in the CART lab now. That will go viral. Okay, ways to keep learning. The Esri community, as I mentioned earlier, we've got 2 minutes. We're right on schedule. The Our Earth video channel, Spatial Reserves, that data blog I mentioned, MOOCs,
massive open online courses. I'm in the location analytics MOOC right now at Esri. They're 5 or 6 weeks long. They're very engaging. They are relevant. They get you into the tools, but also the spatial perspective. Your own university, tribal community, technical college. I mean, we've got some good folks on here that are in that community, and they are very generous with their expertise and their time and helping you be successful. We've got the Learn Lesson Library out there in Esri. We've got Esri Press, some new books that have just come out over the last month. Newsletters, your state and national communities, listservs, conferences, as I mentioned a couple events earlier, and that will be wonderful. I've got a couple of new things that I've created over the last few weeks. We had the AAG, American Association of Geographers Conference, about a week ago, and lots has happened since last week. Anyway, I've got a couple of new story maps with all kinds of resources teaching physical geography and teaching cultural geography with these tools, and then teaching about Earth Day as well, which of course is the topic for today. So with that, I would like to say, first of all, I salute you all in these disruptive times, you educators, you students, you folks out in industry, nonprofits, government agencies. Your work is very inspiring, and keep it up. We've got much too much at stake here on our planet to give up. Keep forging on and be the geo mentors to others, help them along, as I know all of you are doing. So again, I just salute you all, and I want to say, map on. Hey folks around the world, map on. How about this? Just a map before I go, a lesson you can learn. Solving the world's problems, they're easy to discern. Excellent. That's 60 minutes, folks. Thanks for being here. And again, have a great Earth Day and a great week, a great year ahead. We'll see you online somewhere. Take care.